Hi, and happy Friday, everyone. I'm Jory Desjardins of Scope AR, and you are at Productivity Reimagined, our webinar today. Before I turn this over to Shelley, just wanted to do some quick housekeeping and let you all know that we're going to have a session for about 45 minutes, and then about 45 minutes in, we will open to Q&A. So please do drop your questions into the chat or into the Q&A section. We will hopefully get to as many as we can. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Shelley.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. And I'm really excited about this panel. We had a new device drop here in February with the Apple Vision Pro. And with that device, there's quite the interest, and justifiably so, and a number of things surfacing saying that consumer use cases will finally hit this transformational wave of adoption. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is the enterprise use cases that have been in work and have been very successful for quite some time now. The future for enterprise has been here for quite some time. And I can tell you that for almost a decade, we've used this technology in very impactful ways. Now, before we get into the panel discussion here, I'd like to introduce the group, and I'll start. I'm Shelley Peterson. I started off working in this industry space about 2001, where I was owned a company building a monocular for special ops, and later on worked for Lockheed Martin. We brought the technology in for spacecraft manufacturing and did that for about 10 years. Ended up working as a fellow for Lockheed Martin in augmented and mixed reality, which was a fun pursuit. Then I joined Microsoft as a director of mixed reality. And now I help companies through Wizard Wells, the company I started just within the last year. And we're seeing quite the sprint across, aerospace, automotive, manufacturing across the board, healthcare, workforce development, and education. So it's exciting to see how it's growing and transforming. And with the technology, especially in the manufacturing space, there are challenges that need to be solved. And we'll talk about some of those today and how it's progressed over time. But I'd like to start with introductions with Jack Eliker from Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley. I'm Jack Eliker. I sit in our defense group. So Rolls-Royce, if you're unfamiliar, and this may be a letdown to some of you, we don't make automobiles. We produce turbo machinery, pioneer the power that matters. So sitting in the defense group, I'm responsible for what we call advanced visualization, anything in that augmented, mixed reality, virtual reality gambit. Been doing this for Rolls-Royce. Gosh, it's been over 10 years. It's been quite a journey along the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Jack. And Dinesh from EQ.
Hi, my name is Dinesh Khaladkar. I'm the president CEO of EQ Technologic. Our enterprise software platform called EQ, it's a data as a service platform. We are able to actually form a data fabric, connect to multiple applications, and bring that data together onto that fabric so it can be leveraged and used heavily by other parts of business. We do a lot of business in aerospace, defense, DoD, energy, automotive, these types of industrial verticals. So if you look at across the patch in the industrial vertical, by the way, Shelley, Lockheed has been one of our key customers for many, many years, almost 23 years now. So the situation that is, the industry started to adopt AR probably a dozen years back, I think 10 years back. But from that time to today, the technology has evolved so much. So I think the time is ripe for it to finally hit that, that particular milestone, tipping point, if you will, that it starts to get used heavily in industry. And what Apple released with Vision Pro just last month, hopefully it's a game changer once the price is a little bit more reasonable than what it is today. So look forward to this panel.
Excellent. Thank you, Dinesh. And Scott.
Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Montgomerie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Scope AR. I've been working on this for over a decade. We've seen pretty much every pair of AR glasses and have built an agnostic platform that makes it really easy to create augmented reality work instructions for the purposes of training, maintenance, manufacturing, and got a pretty great plethora of customers. Lockheed Martin's one of them. Doing some really cool things. And really excited about the Vision Pro coming out. I think that's a bit of an inflection point. An iPhone moment where Apple kind of comes along and shows everybody how to build a pair of great glasses, and the Android effect comes along where everybody kind of comes along and replicates it and builds a great ecosystem. And along with that, the demands of customers increases. And so, the point of today's panel is really all about, what enterprise AR really means, and what it takes to really deploy in the enterprise. And so that means, a lot of things around talking to other systems. So bringing in data from PLM systems, for example, and then, using the data that you can collect during an augmented reality procedure and writing that back into other systems of record. So I'm really excited that we've brought together the visionaries that we have today on the call. Jack from Rolls-Royce from the customer perspective, talking about, their use cases and how they envision data to be talking to each other. Dinesh from EQ with a data fabric platform, enabling systems to talk to each other. And then Shelley, definitely one of the visionaries and pioneers in the space. I've been working with Shelley for about a decade now, and it's been great to work with her. And I think she's one of the most well-respected people in the space, is one of the pioneers. So welcome everybody. Really excited about what we're going to be discussing today.
Thank you, Scott. So I think that some of the most effective solutions are the ones who are focused on the end users and solving the end users' challenges. And it's not an easy task. You have to understand how they're going to use the solution and in what environment, and really envision, put yourself in their shoes. With that, Jack, I'd like to start with you to understand how you're using the technology at Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, we kind of run a lot of different areas with augmented reality. Taking a look at it along our life cycle, there's several points. Early in the life cycle, we use augmented reality to market, right, to get that advertising out there. A lot of times it's important for us to reach a customer in a way that's going to create an emotional connection. Once someone has an emotional connection, it's a lot easier to sell a product. But we also want to highlight a lot of important things to us that may not be the things that we're going to share broadly, especially in the defense area. So augmented reality allows us a way to show our digital capabilities, a way to highlight the selling points, and in a way that's going to get that emotional connection to the product. So that's the very start, right? You get that marketing out there. As we start moving further into the product line, when we are looking at sometimes it's a prototype. In the past, we've had instances where even in virtual reality, we've gone and designed the part and make sure everything looks good. And in the one I'm referencing, it was an upgrade, right? So it was an update to an existing platform. So it had to fit with whatever was already there. And we went out. Someone who had looked at it in virtual reality noticed that what they were seeing in reality didn't match up. And this was a very long component. We'd have to print out lots of plastic that's fragile, and so we had run out of a lot of time. So we used augmented reality, and that's another instance where we go and take it out and do what we call a digital prototype to verify that the design is going to fit in the real space. You probably have done something similar if you've ever gone to buy something from Lowe's or Amazon these days, and take a look at how it looks in your room, right? And that's the kind of prototyping that we would do with the engines. Then when we move into the manufacturing and assembly area, you've got very complex wire routings and tube routing. So it becomes sometimes it looks like a rat's nest that you're trying to decipher where things go. And so as you do that, traditionally or in the past, you have either a paper drawing or a two-dimensional image on a screen. And you've got a series of these, and you're trying to imagine where 10 different wires that look very similar, have very similar connections, where each one of these are supposed to actually connect up. And you make the wrong connection, you know, after you've made a few, you might have to start all over, right? And so it can be very frustrating, and it can be prone to a lot of errors, right? And so in a situation like that, being able to use an overlay, you remove that cognitive resource that's occupied in trying to imagine something that's real, and you just go and do it. You just go take it and look, and you do it. So very, very basic, very, very easy and quick wins that are gained in the manufacturing assembly floor. And for us, that's where we've seen the biggest value, biggest impact, I'd say, on value is in that manufacturing area. And then it doesn't stop there. What you build out in the manufacturing, then can go into your maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So when you're out there with people, for us, a lot of times in the military, these are 18-year-old, just out of high school. Maybe they've been through a bit of training, but they're out there expected to make sure that these aircraft are able to fly at a moment's notice. Lives depend on it often, a lot of pressure for an 18-year-old kid. So being able to have that connection back to either their own experts or our experts is what we like to do. We'll have an augmented overlay teaching them, making sure that they're doing things right. So that's involved in there. We do also kind of use the augmented reality in aspects of training as well. Typically, that's more for like on-the-job training when you have something real to augment. Probably spoken too long, but running the gambit of our life cycle is how we apply the augmented reality.
No, I think you captured it quite well. And what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that it's not just a solution for one area of your workflow. It's a solution for the entire life cycle of your workflow, from the design phase through manufacturing to maintenance and sustainment to the end operations. And then also the error prevention. When you say they can just take it and go, look and go perform the task, it means that they're taking out the need to interpret. And when workers interpret their work instruction, that leads to imagination, which is not the state that we normally want them to be in when they're working with step-based work instructions. We want it to be very crisp and clear. Now, Scott, a lot has changed since the days of the custom Unity integrations. Can you share a bit more about how enterprise AR has evolved in your industry?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, back when we were trying to get it in, it was very basic. We were pretty impressed just to get basic CAD models and some animations and I mean everything from alignment using old fiducial markers and the accuracy you can get and the devices. I mean, we've seen so many different AR devices over the years. So yeah, a lot has changed. And I think today we're at a place where it's ready. We're definitely seeing across a variety of companies like Rolls-Royce and many other aerospace companies and across other industries, where the metrics and the return on investment that you get is just tremendous. And so it's no longer a question of if we can do that and pushing the envelope of the technology and only catering to early adopters and those that are willing to kind of push forward through a lot of technical problems. It's much more easy to get it on the shop floor as fast as possible. And really now it's about realizing the value as fast as possible. And realizing value comes in a lot of different ways. A lot of our customers start off with, early pilot projects where, a piece of content can be created fairly quickly to realize that ROI. Maybe they still need to do a study on, the old way, paper instructions or whatever, versus, the new way, displaying information in augmented reality. But very quickly after that, you should be able to roll it out into, at least a staging, if not production environment fairly quickly. And from there, it's really about capturing that data and figuring out how to scale. And so, that's all about, the boring things. It's no longer about, this really sexy technology of putting, 3D stuff, in your field of view to give you information. It's about single sign-on and security and deployment usability and maintainability and revision management and integrating with your manufacturing execution system or your PLM system or your FSM system or whatever it is. So all of that kind of background enterprise stuff is really where we're seeing a lot of the demand today, which is great. I mean, that's the first point of a conversation is no longer, oh, we have to figure out if this works. The first point of conversation is like, cool, can you integrate with these other systems? So I think that's a really great indication that companies are finally ready to take it to scale, and it's just an exciting time, and you've got these amazing devices that are coming out and able to really have the horsepower to do the things we've always wanted to do with them. So that's really exciting.
It's obvious that the value is there when you look at the technology. It's a matter of if it can meet the infrastructure and the integrations that are required. And so, speaking of integrations, Dinesh, EQ Technologic has been involved in integrations for years now. Yeah. Why is AR of interest at this point?
AR, quite frankly, has been always of interest to EQ because that was of interest to our customers. We have many aerospace defense customers, Lockheed, Northrop, Rolls-Royce, and if you take a look at our defense customers, Navy, particular Air Force, their entire business is to make sure that their fleet is ready. There is a lot of work on maintenance, repair, and overall when you go to DoD side. So I don't think that there was any doubt ever that this technology is very useful. Instead of doing manual activities, if you are able to do that in context of what the person or the technician is trying to do, there's no doubt. It just, what has happened now is, I think it's a culmination of many factors bringing it together. The technology itself, affordability, and I still believe that the Vision Pro prices need to go south quite dramatically for it to get mass adopted. And then the integrations. I mean, of course, we are in integration business, but integrations are the hardest problem to solve. To connect data, as Scott mentioned, that you want to connect PLM system to Scope AR to bring that in. That's only one part of the equation. That data from Scope AR needs to go to many systems and onto that, in our language, onto that data fabric. So because I believe is the culmination of this kind of activities that is happening, therefore there is a lot of interest on even on our part. Scott and I, we reached out to each other. We formed a partnership, I think last month or so, maybe 3 weeks back. There is a partnership in place, and we're actively building integration connector for Scott's technology so that it can come and exist onto that data fabric and leverage it to its full extent.
Excellent. So, Jack, many solutions leverage AR, but from your perspective, what must those solutions be capable of in order to scale?
And Dinesh is hitting it on the head here when he talks about connectivity, right? Like making sure that things are connected. When we go into our shop floor environment and we're deploying augmented reality, we're changing the way our work instructions have been done. Traditionally, again, you've got someone typing out textual, possibly with images, work instructions. I'm sorry, Jory, I'm told my mic is soft here. Let me get it closer. Is that better?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So that integration bit is super important because, we're used to the way we've done things. Those connections have been established, they work. And so we trust the work instructions that are given to us to be accurate, and we have processes in place to make sure that they stay that way. If I start loading up a side-loaded augmented reality onto the shop floor, here you pick this up, the guy who's doing the work, the person who's overviewing it, has to trust that what he's looking at is accurate to the same degree that he is trusting what he did before. And so if we're not connected back into a single source of truth on those records, you start introducing the possibility for error. Is this device up to date? Do I need to go manually check and make sure that I've got the latest version? So those connections in the outward direction are super important to us to be able to scale, especially in that manufacturing environment where, in today's world, we've especially been made more aware of the importance of ensuring that every manufacturing step is done appropriately, right? And that also leads back into the feedback loop being important as well. So being able to supply that data back into our systems of record so that we can see, hey, this person checked off, signed off that they did the job. So we can go back in and make sure if there was an error that was caught by our quality escape, that they say, hey, you need to fix that, right? But the same trust that we have in our paper pencil or digital typing it in needs to be there with augmented reality work instructions for it to continue to scale and to grow. And so those connections are absolutely important. Each person or each company is going to have its own issues. We suffer with operating system issues in that we're a Windows based environment. And so when you start looking at these cool things Apple is doing, being able to integrate an iOS into our estate becomes a challenge. Being able to integrate Android is even more of a challenge, right? So the hardware integration bits, are also a struggle for us. And you go back 10 years ago when this journey started, we did not have Wi-Fi in all of our manufacturing environments. So when you're looking at a device that such as like the HoloLens and that, where it may be better to stream the content rather than to have it all be calculated there on device for the obvious reasons. Having that Wi-Fi that's capable of producing those images was a necessary step. And so, there's some digital debt, we like to refer to it, that may have to be overcome with the company. So all of those things build up to steps and things that have to be done to continue to scale and grow.
Heck, it sounds like we were on the same path, because in the early days we had Wi-Fi, but we weren't allowed to connect to it, so we were having to run standalone. And over time we shaped the technology, and Scott helped us with the Scope AR side, Microsoft with the HoloLens side, get to the point where we could connect. And at that point, when you're connected into the other systems, there's challenges with doing that. So Scott, from your viewpoint, what are the challenges with PLM and MES integration that exist today? And how does AR provide a unique solution to that?
Yeah, connecting to PLM systems. PLM has just an amazing amount of data in it, we only need to pull out a certain amount of data. I guess to back up, we really view augmented reality as kind of the final mile of getting instructions to the worker while they're doing their job. It's all about contextual relevance. You only want to show them the information they need right now, because that's all the brain needs to absorb and can absorb, frankly, in order to do the job correctly. And so, how do you extract, the amazing amount of data out of a PLM system, and put it into an augmented reality system to accomplish that goal of only showing that contextual relevance? And so, that could be bringing in, CAD data, obviously, would be pretty important, possibly work instruction data, possibly, PMI data, other things like that. But, all these different systems have their own protocols, and usually they're proprietary and not really easy to work with. So, our view is trying to work with a partner like EQ that's already got these integrations. So for us, we can only write one system in terms of a partnership, and then they can go do the hard work to go do all the things they've already done with getting PLM out of it. And so then once you get the information into an augmented reality session, the amount of data that you can collect during that session is absolutely amazing. You see, so you can track when somebody started a step, when they finished a step, how long it took them, stuff like screenshots and videos and IoT data, checklists, quiz data, all this stuff that is shown to you while you're doing your job, and you can't go to the next step. You can't get like, you literally just can't skip to the next step because it's enforced that you do these things before you go to the next step, which is amazing for compliance. That's just incredible. And so all this data, that gets written into our system, but that's not really where you want it. You want it to be written into another system of record, and that could be, so in terms of a training scenario, it could be a learning management system. If you're, doing sustainment, it could be a field management system. If you're doing manufacturing activity, it could be a manufacturing execution system. And of course, there's no standardization across the industry of any of these systems, especially for MES systems. I mean, many organizations, build their own because nothing off the shelf works. Then, you've got a plethora of other MES systems. I keep hearing of new ones I've never heard of before that customers are using. And so, for us, we're not in that integration business. We don't want to go write connectors to all these different systems. So again, we want to partner with somebody that can do that. But the value of this is bridging that gap, and I'm sure Dinesh is very, very interested in this. How do you connect a PLM system to an MES system? You've got your the instructions on how you build stuff, and then your MES system is what has been built, and how do you bridge that gap? Because the old way of doing things has to go through a piece of meat, as in a human, a worker, and we are all fallible. We're not paying attention, or we forget stuff, or we misinterpret instructions, or we don't do our job correctly. And so, there's an imperfect connection between that PLM system, what I'm supposed to do, and then the MES system, what I have done. And I mean, we see this with Boeing all the time right now, right? Where, somebody forgot to do their job, there isn't proper documentation, and there's just not the systems in place failed to document it. They can't figure out who installed the bolts. There's no video, there's no documentation, right? And so augmented reality can really bridge that gap. We are that connector where we can take PLM information on what you're supposed to be doing. You're going and doing it, and we're recording that information into an MES system. And now it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and we can enforce essentially data integrity through a human, which is incredibly powerful. All the while, the benefit is we're giving the information to this human to do their job much better, much safer, with compliance. So, it just seems like a win-win-win situation for pretty much everybody.
It's if you've seen the movie Moneyball,
Yes.
have you seen that? When I think
Yes.
of integration with PLM and MES, I think of this as being the Moneyball for manufacturing, where you
Love
can
it.
track
I
all
love
of
it.
the stats and metrics, and you can optimize it. I'm a mathematician. I like to optimize. So it's a fantastic way to have that data available so that leadership can see where the waste is. And sometimes it might be finding the best practices, or working with, a little bit of training to enhance the time it takes someone to perform a task. So I think it is very powerful in that sense. Dinesh, as manufacturing companies hop onto the AR train, what do you envision the digital transformation challenges to be from your perspective?
So I think if I think about that question, almost every company, certainly in the industrial domain, doesn't matter the actual industry that they belong, whether it's aerospace, automotive, high tech, at least all the companies that we work with, they all have to embark on a digital transformation journey. They all have. Some of them actually have set up a whole digital transformation office. And they've staffed, various senior VPs as part of that, because they view digital transformation as the key to drive the fundamental growth that their company is looking for. Yeah. And they're trying to do that by reducing non-value added time throughout the business, whether it's in product development, manufacturing, after sales support, you name it. How can you take out the non-value added activities from it, thereby increasing productivity? That should translate into eventually your share price and things like that for those companies who've gone public. So digital transformation is really core strategic initiative for many, many organizations. And I'm with Scott that, augmented reality is that very last mile connectivity that is on the shop floor when that technician is trying to do the job of either maintaining something or assembling something or verifying certain things. And it's quite critical. So fundamentally, I believe there are many challenges, but I would say at the top tier, there are fundamentally two specific challenges that I see of what we hear from people. One is the technology and the cost of technology to adopt it, not just the cost of the AR sets and things like that. That's core, that's important. But as Jack was mentioning, how do you bring that into, if it is an iOS-based system, how do you integrate that? Because that creates another hurdle, another level of expenses. So that's the first part of it. How do you bring that in? And the second part of it comes down to this entire integration that everybody has been speaking about. We embarked on trying to do that in EQ's history. We've been in business since year 2000. We started our company by going after business intelligence, analytics, pretty graphics, visualizations, and that kind of a thing. Lockheed on the F-35 program was one of the first customers for us at that time, going back to 2003 and beyond. And since then, the platform has evolved into this low no-code integration platform. And its job is to actually go connect to all of these ASOTs, authoritative sources of truth, PLM obviously being one of them. But if I look at Lockheed uses every PLM system that a human being has ever made. Lockheed has it. It depends on the business. Rolls-Royce was no different. Rolls-Royce is now coalescing towards one platform. But MES, which is another part of that whole golden triangle between ERP, PLM, and MES. MES, it's a wide level of competition there. There is number of companies that are there. And all of these three systems need to talk to each other very nicely, especially for a manufacturing company, to build the efficiency, build the momentum, build the velocity that is required. So that's the two fundamental challenges. One is the cost of the infrastructure, and the second is this integrations. And yes, there are other costs of training and activities that would come about, but these two, I would put them at the very high end.
So on that topic, when you're addressing the challenges with low and no code data integration analytics platform, what are the out-of-the-box solutions that are available?
If I can show one or two slides, that conversation would go a lot easier. Is that okay if I share it?
Sure.
You should see my screen now, right?
Yes.
You able to see my slide, guys?
Yep.
We can see it.
So real quick, our platform EQ has integration suite of products and analytics suite of products. Integration suite of products is spearheaded by EQ by Mine that forms the digital backbone. And if you follow the digital thread in any company, you start with Cameo, Doors, Polarian, those kinds of activities, go to PLM systems, get into simulation activities, planning activities, ERP activities, and it starts to get into your asset management, CRM, homegrown databases, all the way to IoT, like through ThingWorks, almost like a digital thread is set up there. So these applications that you see here, EQ connects to about 85 of these applications. You see these blue arrows. These blue arrows are the ones that we create, and we certify those connections to those companies. So Jack is with Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce has an enterprise agreement with EQ. They use, I don't know the exact number, Jack, but it's probably got to be close to 100 connections, 100 blue arrows are being used throughout Rolls-Royce's patch. And what is happening with these blue arrows is we use the published APIs of that application. So Teamcenter is a PLM thing, Windchill is a PLM application, SAP S/4HANA, we use their native APIs to build that blue arrow. That gives us many advantages. We can connect to it from a front door. So we are able to talk to that application like how an end user will. So all of the security and the logic, of course, for aerospace defense, for our DoD customers, security is paramount. So they put all kinds of access control rules and logic on top of that. We're able to honor those to connect to this data. The point is, once you connect these applications, they form the nodes for our data fabric. Essentially, this EQ by My platform goes and weaves the data fabric for you. So right now, you do not see Scope AR as a blue arrow here, because it's under construction in our shop. Hopefully, within the next month or so, we'll see a blue arrow that says Scope AR. And what is significant there is once it comes onto the backbone, or once it comes onto the fabric, any data, so you require data from one of these PLM systems, or in the case of Lockheed, you may need it from multiple of these PLM systems to scope AR. Depending upon the business area you're working in, we'll be able to bring that connection together or take data from scope AR, like Scott was talking about, what did actually happen? What were the checks that you perform? All of that data may need to be fed back into MES system, going back into ERP system. So that's what our fabric does. And I'll go to one more slide and I'll stop, okay? So we're talking about this golden triangle, ERP, PLM, MES. So one of the things we as a company are doing is to actually, we have embarked on trying to offer pre-packaged, out-of-the-box solutions to the market. And so CLM, closed loop manufacturing, which is this golden triangle. Take any manufacturing company, irrespective of their size of their business in terms of revenue, the industry they belong, the country that they are in, they all require this golden triangle to talk to each other nicely, PLM, MES, and ERP. So if I now connect the dots of this golden triangle to scope AR, then I believe that we have quite a foolproof end-to-end kind of a system that is there. So stop back to you, Shelley.
I love this diagram. I think when you and I talked a few weeks ago, you view augmented reality as kind of another layer on this diagram. So kind of, that is the fabric that's connecting these three systems. I think that's perfect visualization. It's really.
And this is just not these three systems. We can go back into connecting to your, if there is a ThingWorx like, some sort of a, industrial system at the end, right? That we should be able to interact with that as well and pass on the data. There is asset management systems. So some of the data that you actually see based on the work that the technician is doing. And I won't get into the top half of it, which is the analytics part of it. But we have included machine learning and artificial intelligence in our platform. So I believe, Scott, that scope AR would generate incredible amounts of data. Then if we are able to put artificial intelligence on top of that, that could provide a lot of insights getting into that. So that's the reason we formed the partnership with Scott and Scope AR. And I think hopefully within the next month or two, you will see something that we are taking to the market together. All right.
Absolutely.
This is very interesting. I can see how it could be incredibly powerful. Scott, we know that AR is solving significant challenges in manufacturing spaces and other industry spaces. But as far as use cases, what are you seeing that's surfacing and that's been most effective, highest value?
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly, I think like Jack talked about, on the shop floor, you've got manufacturing use cases. So being able to show technicians, what they need to do to assemble, components. Is incredibly powerful. I think Shelley, early on, one of the metrics that you identified was that time to information. So the idea that you don't have to go to the binder sitting on the side of a shop floor to get the measurements or something like that. It's just in front of you. That brings that time to information down to almost zero. Then there's the efficiency gain around having an animation on top of the equipment you're showing you the part that needs to be installed, how it needs to be done. Just recently I was talking to somebody and I think the battery on their glass died and they flipped up the visor. And if somebody hadn't been sitting there, they would have actually installed the part on backwards. And so and I think you had the same thing with Mylar where they were about to drill holes backwards or something like that. So just that 3D orientation of seeing what you're supposed to be doing and not making a mistake by putting it on backwards or something like that is incredibly valuable to avoid rework. And then there's the sustainment. I mean, I think Jack's been talking a lot about MRO. giving it to your end customer and giving them kind of a derivative or similar instructions to how you built it to how you fix it. It's kind of just the reverse. This is how to, on a manufacturing floor, this is how I put stuff together. MRO is how do I take it apart and then put it back together, right? So a very similar use case there with obviously tremendous savings. So I think those are kind of the big things. Training, getting familiarity before you go to the shop floor for either MRO or manufacturing is also another big one. The ability to just simulate a task, possibly, in something like a VR headset or a Vision Pro before you go to the shop floor on, a fake aircraft or a fake engine, and be familiar with that, and then go straight on the shop floor, see the exact same thing, but doing it for real this time. That's incredibly powerful. So just the technology allows you to visualize this information in so many different ways, and it just works so nicely for getting information into a human's brain. That's really the crux of why this technology is so exciting.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really interesting how it takes out the need to interpret, and we measured it across decision logic, military's OODA, observe, orient, decide, act, but it was interesting to see how it changed the way that workers would approach a task. And like you say, having the information that's needed without additional information is incredibly important, because it allows them to focus on the task at hand, get that portion done, move on to the next step, and it really accelerates the workflow.
Absolutely.
Jack, can you tell us more about Rolls-Royce's long-term plan for integrating AR technology into its existing processes?
No, you're still sharing. So you're moving around a little bit there on the screen.
Oh, I can stop share. Hold on.
Yeah, so Rolls-Royce longer term, it's really that scaling, right? It's taking it in. We need to have those connections built within Rolls-Royce, right? So Dinesh, one time, right? And then user adoption, right? Just bringing it in and having the users themselves want to be a part of it, getting more excited about it. So spreading it out. There's a varying range of people that want to use it in different spots. So, there's people that are super excited and want to have it come in. There are people that say, I'm going to be retired before this becomes a thing, right? Like they've seen Star Trek and they're looking for the holodeck and they know it's going to be sometime when they're retired. So, there's a varying range on that user adoption, but yeah, scaling it up, making it more broadly used and more integrated with our current systems, our current plans.
So
Jack, something you said. Oh, sorry, Jack. Something you said earlier about the 18-year-olds that expected to maintain aircraft out there. Are you seeing the same thing on the shop floor and kind of on the manufacturing side of things as well? Just the lack of labor and kind of the lack of skills. Is that interesting to you guys?
Yeah. So we have like everyone, we have an aging workforce, right? And unfortunately, there just hasn't been nearly the interest that there has been in the past in getting your hands dirty, right? Like, it's not clean work to be working on a system that uses jet fuel and jet oil. There's lots of reasons for it, but anyway, so yeah, we see a lot of aging workforce, and we don't see a lot of people willing to replace them coming up. So those who remain, we need to ensure that they are able to do more than what they have been able to do in the past, right? And so when you talk about augmented reality and the force multiplier that it provides, yes, that's important to us. And then of course the knowledge capture. We have some tasks. We have engines that were designed before the 50s that are still in production today, and there was no digital, right? They are handwritten drawings. And then there's what you might call tribal knowledge, right? There's just these things that this guy, he's been doing it for 50 years. And he was the guy who started doing it. And somewhere along the way, he figured out the best way to do it. And how are we supposed to transfer that on, right? No one's captured it. It wasn't done digitally, right? So being able to capture that knowledge is important and multiplying our workforce.
So I have another question for you. I mean, we've seen across the industry that The return on investment can be there. The KPIs can make sense. The technology doesn't come into fruition for an organization unless there's leadership buy-in. But how do you get leadership buy-in?
That's me.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Long question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think most leaders, if you get the business case right, they'll at least move forward, right? So being able to prove value, and it's not just that, hey, this is going to be value. They tend to want it within a certain time frame, right? So in a relatively short time frame for 50-year product life cycle, right? So being able to show value and show that value quickly. Now, there are things with that. When you look at, eating the whole elephant, when you look at this massive project that you've got to bring in, we've got to bring in Wi-Fi, we've got to do all these different things. It starts to look too much and too daunting, especially when you're looking at getting that return quickly. So one of the approaches we've taken over the years that seems to have been successful is what can we do now, and where can we show the value immediately? We don't like to do experiments that aren't going to produce value. So if we're going to go out there and we're going to try augmented reality in a new area, we're going to do it in a way that experiment itself is going to be valuable to us, and it's going to provide a reduction. So a lot of these one-off cases that we've done, there was an instance not that long ago where we were needing to do some modal hammer testing. So someone takes a calibrated hammer and whacks it on the engine, and there's sensors to measure the dynamic response to that. There's something in the neighborhood of 500, 700 points on a case of our engine where they need a whack, right? And jet engines tend to be round, right? And so you need to be able to measure where along all these points you're going to go. So no joke, they're out there with strings, putting strings around it, measuring where the distances are, and then writing on the string, and then putting it up there, holding it up, putting a little sticky little sticker on there indicating where you need to whack it, right? So our Bristol guys had done something similar. Our people over here were starting up that process, and so we reached out and said, hey, can we do this? And just to see if it'll be useful for you guys. And so it was something where we thought, hey, this will provide some real value quickly. And so we went out there to see if it worked. And in that see if it worked, we reduced the workload from what they said 2 to 4 days down to 2 to 4 hours. And that was using an augmented reality, just importing in from a CSV where all those points are, so it just puts it out there, and you just have to lock on. So that's the kind of things that get you those quick wins, immediate value. Your experiment is to provide value, and then they start, you get those numbers that they believe, which are internal numbers, right, that you're producing it, and then you're able to grow and expand. And each step along the way provides us something new, right? Provides us something new to that big piece of the elephant, right? So it helps build our final product as well.
It's very important to show the value, and we would, when I was at Lockheed, we would look at all of the different layers, the technicians on the shop floor, the engineers, the quality team, the executive leadership, the customers. We would try to figure out how the technology benefits each one of those groups and make sure that it was solid for each one of the groups. Surprisingly, the group that often had the most pushback was the middle layers of management. And it's because they're taking on the risk and having to meet the schedule. And when we showed that we could, accomplish that, they seemed pretty happy. Okay, everyone, we're about to take questions, Q&A. And so if you have any additional questions, type those in. But before we go there, I want to ask Scott one last question while we're getting the questions coming in. What areas do you think AR will expand into? This is always one of my favorite questions.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously I talked to a lot of people, and I don't think it takes a lot of imagination to figure out where this can be used. And so, I definitely think it's going to, like we just talked about, it's all about ROI. And so where can you have the biggest immediate ROI? So we've talked a lot about, on, shop floor and maintenance activities, but within, I think, 5 to 10 years, especially as, what Apple's done, that's going to spur competition. That, Samsung is going to come out with a Vision Pro killer soon. And then, LG and, HTC and all the manufacturers are going to, this is going to be the new era of computing. And so that lends itself to some really cool things. Like, I always talk about IKEA furniture, or any furniture building. I had a baby about a year ago. I had to build a crib, and I got 3/4 of the way through building the crib and realized, crap, I put something on the wrong way. Well, if I had seen it being built in front of me in 3D, I wouldn't have made that mistake, right? So you always, choose the wrong part or make some, interpretation mistake. So, that's interesting. I mean, car repair, the hobby repair, just like, I'm sure I'm going to be buying a ton of toys with some assembly required, right? Like, or a barbecue, or, like, there's just all these things from a consumer perspective that could be really interesting. Not to say the least of all the enterprise use cases that we've already talked about here, manufacturing, field service, MRO, training, so yeah, I think this is going to be a transformation to technology that, within, I don't know, some time frame, 5, 10 years, we'll think, how did we ever live without this? Just like, our smartphones today, right? So I think it's a really exciting space.
I was driving along one time and the fuel pump went out on the car out in the country, and I had to get on the phone with my dad, and he walked me through he had a fuel pump in the back because he knew it was going to happen at some point, but he didn't know when. And changed it out on the phone, but it would have been so much easier with this type of technology. Okay, for the Q&A, there's a question that we have coming from Mohammed. He's an expert for organizations that set international standards for augmented reality and virtual reality. This is interesting, Mohammed. He says, we're looking for AR, VR use cases. Can you share one of your use cases with the ISO committee? Who would like to take this question? I might add a few to it.
Scott.
Man, which one? There's so many. Let's see here. Mohammed, can you narrow it down a little bit? Is there a specific area that you're looking for? Manufacturing floor, something like that. I don't know if you can talk to me.
I'll tell you what, we'll wait for a response there, and we'll go to another question. We'll come back to you, Mohammed. Let's see, do you see this extending into healthcare and medical devices?
Yeah, we've definitely seen the medical device field be pretty interesting, and across a variety of use cases. In fact, all the ones I already meant, the broad areas, the broad areas that we see is definitely training, manufacturing, and field service. So from a training perspective, we've got one medical device manufacturer that's training sales teams on how to sell a medical device. So these things are really complicated, but also highly competitive. And so in a high pressure hospital situation where you have to sell some orthopedic a piece of equipment against a competitor, knowing how to sell your product really well, and knowing the pros and cons of it and how to approach that is a real benefit. Then on the field service side, being able to either install or fix medical equipment in an environment, maybe a lab, maybe a hospital. We've definitely got some customers with those types of use cases as well. So again, it's sort of that training, but also on the job training where may not be exactly familiar with how to fix an X-ray machine, for example, but if I can overlay my CAD content on it and show me how to remove a panel and change out the fluid or an electrical panel, something like that, I can do my job much more effectively. Then on the manufacturing side as well, we've got some great customers there that are improving their yields. So yeah, it definitely has a broad applicability on the in life sciences. Okay,
Mohammed's not making it any easier for you. He says any area.
Any area. Got it. Okay. Let's see here. Well, yeah, on the shop floor, we routinely see, really great ROI. So, between 10% on the low end in terms of improvement of just time, all the way up to 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80% in terms of reduction in time, in terms of manufacturing. So that could be, just getting familiarity with a task. I mean, we already talked about, time to information. I mean, maybe Mohammed, I mean, there's so many of these things. Maybe we should connect later and we can go through some of these things to get really specific. But I think there's just so many that we can talk about. So probably doesn't make it any easier for you.
There's so many. There's step-based work instruction we were using to build the crew seats for the astronauts for Artemis is an example.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
step-based instruction to assemble and taking out about 50% of the touch labor in the process. Similar to Jack's scenario with the hammer, we were using augmented reality, mixed reality to place fasteners on spacecraft panels. So taking out 90% of the touch labor, a 30-day activity down into 3 days, for example, or a 8-shift activity down to 6 hours. That one spans across to, heaters and thermistors and strain gauges and standoffs. The fun metric that we would use was that we would save $38 per fastener, and at the time Lockheed was purchasing 2 million fasteners per year. So the numbers add up pretty quickly, pretty easily on the ROI side. We see that span across to maintenance and sustainment. Be happy to circle with you on the side to talk additional use cases, but it spans so many different areas. Here's a question from Eric. Isn't the virtual place the best place and safest place to fail? As an L&D expert, I would love to see the stat to failure to improve the next iteration of the training.
So I guess is the question there probably around, augmented versus virtual reality? That kind of seems to allude to that. So if that's not it, let me know. So for us, right? So we take a look at what's the point of training, and typically the purpose of it is to get a person to be capable of doing something, right? They need to be capable. And so when we're looking at virtual reality, and we do that for our training, absolutely. And it makes it so that a person gets to that point in space and time where they know enough to be capable of doing a job. It speeds that up, right? It makes it faster. It gives you like you said, the opportunity to fail. You can hit reset, fail. So in the same amount of time, you're able to do a lot more mental reps. And then in the augmented reality, though, so when you're actually out there performing the task, it can shift that point over. So that point where someone's capable of doing something, it can actually shift it over. So virtual reality tends to speed them up to get to that point. Augmented makes it so you don't need to know as much to be able to perform that task. And you can look at some of the military applications. I've seen some, around, tank platoons where, there's the guy who knows how to fix the tread. And, if he's unable to do that job anymore, you want someone to be able to do that, right? So using that augmented reality in that kind of a situation is valuable, especially. But yeah, that's kind of how we look at using both of them in a training aspect. One speeds it up, one makes it so you don't need to know as much because you're doing on the job.
That's an excellent question, Eric. And also add that augmented reality helps prevent mistakes to begin with. 5 years across 10 sites, we didn't have a single error when augmented reality was in use, which was probably a more important metric than the 90% touch labor savings in that space. David is asking a question: how do you see AI involved in the future generations of work instruction development for use in scope AR? That's a good one.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. So yeah, I mean, obviously AI is taking the world by storm. And I think we've seen a lot of really interesting applications. And I mean, really at the end of the day, I mean, generative AI is all about content development. It can help you generate essays and textual content. It can help you create images and videos as of last week. And so yeah, we are a content creation platform as well. And so how can AI be applied to that? So we've got a lot of really great ideas, but I'm particularly inspired by using natural language as an interface. So the idea that you can just tell ChatGPT, like, write me an essay and it'll just do it for you. There's a really cool Photoshop commercial from Adobe where an 8-year-old girl goes and creates a really professional photo by herself. And so, how can you use Gen AI for something like a complicated AR work instruction thing? So we've got some really great things that we'll be announcing in the next little bit. But things around a natural language interface. So create an animation, create a model, generate a work instruction to, fix my B-52 jet engines. All those things are definitely possible through AI. And really at the end of the day, what that is taking a really complex interface and making it accessible with natural language and letting the AI do a lot of that intelligence of converting, your intention into, actions that a computer can understand. So I think there's really broad applications, and we're really excited about our roadmap there. So.
Excellent. Here's a question. Continuing on the Moneyball theme, how does this technology help standardize connections across the manufacturing plant with regards to SCADA networks and brokers like Kafka or MQTT?
I'll start, and then I'll maybe turn it over to Dinesh. Obviously there's in a lot of factories, there's a ton of technology that's been adopted over the past 20, 30, 40 years, and still there. So we have an IoT connector. It runs on MQTT. We've got other partnerships with other vendors that do exactly this. They speak all the different IoT languages, like SCADA, and then convert it into a singular API language like MQTT. So definitely you've got a ton of data, a ton of sensors on a factory floor or wherever, and being able to visualize that data in augmented reality is incredibly powerful. We've got lots of really interesting use cases there, from smart tools to visualizing real-time data on top of an aircraft for temperature during annealing or stress testing or something like that. So lots of really, really cool use cases there.
Excellent.
Absolutely. I mean, as Scott mentioned, there are multiple use cases when you're trying to connect to the shop floor collection systems. MQTT and others are just protocols that are widely used across the manufacturing space. So, I think to bring that data in, that's the job from an EQ vantage point. That's what we do. So if there is gaps that are there between what the data is being collected, and to bring that in, merge that data with other systems that you have, that's where I see a lot of potential as an integrated fabric.
Excellent. Well, I think that we are at time. I'd like to thank everyone for joining.
We are, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions. We'll do our best to respond to those after. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Scott, for such a great discussion.
Thank you.
We'll follow up with the full transcript and with the recording. Have a great Friday, everyone.